happy to be joining you today to give you a bit of information about this very important work that we've been doing. So I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're all meeting from today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So a little bit about me before we get started. So yes, I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the Parenting and Family Support Centre at the University of Queensland. And many of you may also know me as the sort of coordinator of the Parenting and Family Research Alliance, or PAFRA, as well. So my research primarily looks at the links between adversity, parenting, and well-being across the life course and across generations. And so that's how that's sort of the lens that I bring to this work on youth justice. And I've got my co-presenter here, Miss Sarah Little, who has also been co-leading this action circle with me. So Sarah, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Karis. Yes, a little bit about me too. I'm the co-facilitator of the Australian Youth Justice Action Circle with Karis, and I completed my Bachelor of Science with Honours in Psychology in 2024. My research interests are in parenting support, particularly for vulnerable communities such as minorities and those experiencing adversity and corporal punishment. I'm a senior research technician at the University of Queensland at the Parenting and Family Support Centre, and I hold another role specialising in crisis intervention with women and children from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds impacted by domestic and family violence. So I'll hand it over to Karis now to get us started with the presentation.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so just need to start off with a brief declaration of interest. So as I mentioned, I'm a postdoctoral research fellow, and my position is partly funded by the ARC Centre of Excellence for Children and Families over the Life course. And the Parenting and Family Support Centre where I'm located is partly funded by royalties from the PPP Positive Parenting Programme. So today, this presentation, we're going to go through a few elements of what sort of comprises this action circle. So looking at its formation, strategy, who's in it, and sort of then the why did we need to make this action circle, and what have we done, and what are we doing next? So this action circle that I'm talking about, so we're called the Australian Youth Justice Action Circle. And this is really a group of researchers who have come together under the auspices of the Parenting and Family Research Alliance. And what really spurred us to come together is the sort of growing movement in the public discourse towards a punitive approach to the youth justice situation in Australia. So we've seen changes over the last few years that have become quite concerning, where there's more of a move towards punitive and kind of like punitive approaches that put children and young people through the same sort of circumstances as what adults are going through in the youth justice system, and also big political sort of messaging around like adult crime, adult time, that sort of thing. So we started to get quite concerned that there is this movement happening around us. And obviously we know as parenting researchers that parents, families and communities are so very important in the lives of all young people, including those who are involved in the youth justice system. So we saw this sort of opening there for us to have a say, to potentially make a positive impact on the discourse, and then hopefully on the direction that the policy and the youth justice system itself actually takes from here. So really we were wanting to move that conversation away from punishment and more towards prevention and rehabilitation. And as a part of that, thinking about how can the families and how can the communities be involved in this approach towards youth crime and youth justice, so that we get better outcomes for both the like offenders, you know, who are committing these crimes, as well as young people who might be at risk for committing crimes, and then also other people like the victims, the communities, the families who are also impacted by youth justice. So in order to do that, we've pulled together a group of multidisciplinary academics from across a wide range of areas. And so that includes, we've got people who work in crime prevention and in public health. We've got child development experts, and also people who work in parenting intervention and economics. And it's been a really great, diverse and dynamic group that we've pulled together. And so we've had a wide range of contributors who have sort of contributed, like they've given input and direction in a wide variety of ways across the activities that we've conducted, that Sarah's going to tell you a bit more about in just a few minutes. But I just wanted to list here, these are the people who have played like major roles so far, and we are still sort of open to more people joining as well. But you can see here that we've got people from a wide variety of universities, not just in Queensland, where me and Sarah are based, but also in Melbourne and Victoria as well. And also in the ACT as well. And we've got people from a wide range of like career stages, I suppose you could say. So say, for example, my co-lead for this whole action circle is Sarah, who is, you know, she's finished her honours and is sort of at that very early stage of her career. And then there's people like me and a few others here who are postdoctoral research fellows, and then through to associate professors and full professors. So it's been a really great, diverse group who have come together. So we're not just representing different disciplines, but we're also representing different career stages, different institutions, and different ways of thinking. And so it's been a great way to sort of increase our networks and to draw from the strengths of all these different people. So in coming together with this big group of people, we've managed to sort of have, like, we decided very early on what were our key objectives for this action circle, because this is such a giant area to tackle. So we needed to be quite specific in, well, what is it that we are trying to do? And we came up with these key objectives, which were really around, firstly, identifying key stakeholders in terms of who can we approach in this advocacy work that may be able to sort of give us some information, who might be able to bring some expertise, and then also who is it that can maybe potentially make a difference, and what are those avenues for making a difference. And we wanted to generate research-informed policy recommendations. So obviously, as a research organisation, being PAFRA, and then also the individual members of our action circle were all researchers. So for us, it was very important that whatever we do be evidence-based, and that we are bringing together the research in this area and using that to inform our recommendations. And that's really where we see a lot of our strength as being. And so in order to, doing all of this is with the aim of influencing youth justice reforms through policy engagement in particular. And through doing that, advocating for early intervention and family-based approaches. So when we were first meeting and talking about these issues, it sort of became clear that it's quite a nebulous area where there's so many stakeholders, there's so many things to consider, there's so many contributing factors and so many knock-on effects. And so thinking about all of that that's going on when we're thinking about young people committing crimes and young people getting tied up into the youth justice system, whether they've committed any crimes or not, Thinking about all of that, we struck on the importance of early intervention and family-based approaches, and that being our areas of expertise, and that's where we can bring the most value to this discourse and to the advocacy that we're doing. So that's really what our focus has been. And so as with that as our focus, we've got a few different outputs that we've been working towards. One of which we have already completed, which is the Senate inquiry submission. And Sarah's going to go into a bit of depth about that today. And within that, we made evidence-based policy recommendations. We're also forming a position statement, which is more of like a academically focused commentary that's going to be disseminated more broadly than what the Senate inquiry submission would be. And then also we're planning to publish an article in The Conversation to again go for an even broader dissemination of this work and this important perspective that we bring about the importance of early intervention and family-based approaches in the youth justice space. So now I'm happy to pass over to Sarah, who's going to talk to you a bit more about this need for the Action Circle, and then also what are the things that we've done and what are we planning to do.
Thank you, Karis. So parenting and family support programs, they're crucial in addressing the risk factors that can lead to youth involvement in the youth justice system, yet they often lack adequate funding because policies focus on the children already in contact with police and the courts. And this preventing the youth violence requires addressing the root causes like child maltreatment, behaviour problems, and family conflict. And these factors are linked to later criminal behaviour, with research showing that high levels of early adversity, particularly family dysfunction and maltreatment, are prevalent amongst young people in the youth justice system. So a population level approach to early intervention, focusing on parenting support and child behaviour, can help to reduce the risk factors like child maltreatment and antisocial and problem behaviours, potentially assisting in preventing future criminal involvement. However, these preventative programs are often implemented in families, schools, childcare centres, and community centres, typically lack necessary ongoing funding and resources so that they maintain their effectiveness in communities. With the recent media coverage in Queensland in particular, but also other states and territories in Australia, there are the growing punitive attitudes amongst the public, and politicians have responded with policies that create an over-reliance on harsher consequences for youth, with detention often being the default consequence. However, the youth justice system was not originally designed to be punitive. It was separate from the adult system in order to redirect and rehabilitate troubled children to prevent future entrenchment in the criminal justice system and to prevent them from continuing criminal behaviours into adulthood. Unfortunately, though, we see the effects of over-reliance of detention, particularly here in Queensland, with human rights violations, with children as young as 10 being held in adult watch houses for extended periods of time. Over-reliance on detention and punitive measures is detrimental to children's wellbeing outcomes, and the prospect of rehabilitation, because it exposes them to harsh environments that re-traumatize and hinder their development. Youth in the justice system often face further trauma, isolation and abuse, which can exacerbate their existing vulnerabilities. So incarceration can be extremely detrimental to them individually, but also to the family cohesion and relationships that they have, causing isolation and reducing their sense of belonging to their communities, which has cumulative effects over time, perpetuating cycles of dysfunction. Young offenders who experience incarceration are more likely to face higher rates of reoffending and have poorer life outcomes compared to those who receive support and rehabilitation through other interventions. The serious violent crimes cause lasting harm to victims, particularly, and their families, and strong victim supports are needed in response to these incidents. Detention for young offenders is ineffective, and it's also ineffective at keeping communities safe, as they fail to reduce reoffending and increase risk of more serious offences, which overlook the importance of rehabilitation for genuine long-term community safety. There was approximately $208 million spent on youth detention in 2023 in Queensland, which has been reported in the Productivity Commission in 2023 report on government services. And this is a considerable expenditure to detain youth and an unsustainable solution to youth justice policy. All of these negative impacts highlight the need for resourcing to alternatives to incarceration that focus on rehabilitation, family support, and evidence-based preventative interventions. Next slide, please, Karis. So the first output of the AJAC, of the Australian Youth Justice Action Circle, was the submission to the Senate inquiry on Australia's youth justice and incarceration system on the 10th of October 2023. This inquiry was a federal review of Australia's youth justice system and aims to assess current policies and practices. All submissions needed to focus on one or more of these issues related to youth justice system, and our submission was titled A Call for Evidence-Based Youth Justice Reform, Prevention and Rehabilitation Through Family and Community Support. It touched on all the issues, whereby in issue E, we discussed the importance of an evidence-based population-level approach to youth justice with a focus on rehabilitation and prevention of offending and reoffending through cost-effective family and community intervention. So we'll also provide a link where you can download a copy of this submission at the end of this presentation for your own perusal, and a link which also matches to the PAFRA webpage, so you can see a little bit more about the Action Circle and the other outputs that might come up in future. The final outcome of this report, the final report from the Senate inquiry, it's due on the 1st of July in 2025. So looking forward to seeing what the outcome of that is. Next slide, please. Youth justice reform, it's an important issue in Australia and is particularly important for the voices of researchers to emphasise evidence-based approaches to policy. Our work with this submission could help shape future funding and legislative priorities towards rehabilitative intervention that are parenting, family and community centred. This is a highly politicised and emotionally fueled issue, which is why prevention also needs to be prioritised by driving evidence-based solutions to the root causes of youth offending and protect human rights through a trauma-informed approach to ensure safer communities and long-term positive outcomes. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, we have two more potential outputs for the Action Circle. The first is already well in motion, developing an academic commentary to be submitted to a journal as a position statement. And we could also potentially extend this with a piece in the conversation. We will also be monitoring the release of the final report of the Senate and consider what the next steps might be from that outcome. I'll now hand you back to Karis, who's going to talk about the challenges and opportunities.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Yes, so throughout the course of working with this Action Circle, we've come across a few different sort of barriers and challenges that I just wanted to mention quickly here. So in terms of our barriers to having the influence that we'd really like to have in this space, there's a few different things that are going on. So firstly, there is that political climate that really favors the tough on crime rhetoric. And particularly we see this around times of elections. So we did have the Queensland election last year, and the tough on crime rhetoric was very strong. And it'll be interesting to see, as the Australian election is approaching, how much this rhetoric continues as well on that national scale. There's also a big resistance to evidence-based approaches that are preventative, because especially among, say, the policymakers who are in charge of budgets and they have limited budgets, and sometimes there can be a real focus on the urgency of the situation and the need or the perceived need for a quick fix. So that's where the punitive approaches they can become quite sort of appealing, because it can be seen as like, well, we're doing something, we're putting these young people away, we're stopping them from offending because they're not in the community, so therefore job done. But we know from the evidence, it's very clear that really the longer term strategies that are focused on prevention, that are focused on working with families and communities, and not just focused on punishment, these are what is really needed in the long term to achieve the outcomes that we want, which is less crime, less reoffending, better outcomes for victims, and better outcomes for families and communities and young people and everybody, right? But this takes time and it takes money. And so there's quite a bit of a resistance that can be seen against that approach in favor of the sort of urgent quick fix approach. So that's really what we are trying to fight against, with presenting strong evidence for the cost effectiveness of preventative approaches, as well as the sort of case studies of where more preventative approaches have been taken. So we're trying to overcome these barriers, but nevertheless, they are there. And then operationally, just in terms of running an action circle, there are some challenges as well. So trying to navigate the fast-paced policy changes that are happening. All the work that we do takes a bit of time, because we've got to think about it, we've got to do some research, we've got to do writing, getting people together who are working across all these different institutions. And this is sort of a part of the service that they're doing as part of their job often. But that means that it's on top of all of their existing sort of responsibilities and things. So trying to navigate that in the context of where things can change quite quickly, say in the public discourse or in policy, there can be like new conversations happening, and like say what we saw at the very beginning of this action circle coming together with the sort of Queensland government making changes to human rights laws and things like that. It's like trying to navigate that and figure out, like, what does this mean? What do we need to do? What can we do? And then, as I mentioned, there's then a bit, this idea of capacity is a big thing as well when we're dealing with any collaboration. And the people who are contributing have varying levels of capacity to contribute. And that can change over time as well. So, you might see that sometimes people, when the action circle was first formed, there might be more capacity, more interest, more energy. But then over time that might change, and maybe some people are no longer able to contribute in the same way that maybe they would like to. So then but then at the same time, other people at that time may become more available. And over time, we have had people come in and out of the action circle, and so it's been not a huge challenge in terms of like making it a barrier to what we're achieving. In fact, it can actually be kind of a good thing in a way, where you've got this dynamic flow of people coming in and out and bringing new things to the work that we're doing to sort of strengthen our overall position. But we do also have the challenge of sort of, really, there's only so much we can do with our research, right? So we can do the thinking, we can do the research, we can do the writing, we can make the submissions, we can put out the papers and the articles, but like how much that actually translates into policy is somewhat out of our control. So there's only sort of so much that we can do, but we have to do it, really. We're passionate about this. We really believe that it's the right thing for Australia. And so nevertheless, despite these barriers, despite these challenges, we sort of just, we keep pushing forward and trying to find the best way to act so that we can be more sure that, or at least a bit more hopeful, that our work is actually going to translate into real change. So thinking of that idea of sort of, the action circle, the challenges, there are also a lot of strengths and opportunities. And I've mentioned a few of these already today, but big thing, I think, is the sort of potential of these action circles, both in terms of the Youth Justice Action Circle, but other ones as well that are happening at the moment and might happen in the future, is that it's a great way for us to draw on this network that we have through the Parenting and Family Research Alliance, because we've got a wide range of people, many like experts, people in all different career stages and different fields, coming together with this common interest around parenting and family. And so being able to draw on that network to create this action circle and to do this work has been really fantastic. It's also been a way for us to extend that PAFRA network because, as I mentioned at the start, we do have people who are working outside of parenting and family. So we've got, say, economists and people who work in community and who work in justice. So it's been a way for us to take not just the PAFRA network, but to also extend it out. And now they're sort of these friends of PAFRA who can contribute to the work that we're doing and make it that sort of like a higher impact, more multidisciplinary piece of work, which is fantastic. And hopefully those people might be able to be drawn on for future PAFRA action circles as well, so we can continue this trend. And also this work in terms of PAFRA's visibility out there with policymakers, and then once we get our, say, conversation article out there, it'll be increasing the visibility of PAFRA with the public. And then with the academic journal article, we'll be increasing PAFRA's visibility with the academic community as well. So hoping that this work not only has the impact in terms of the youth justice work that we're trying to do, but also with future work that PAFRA can engage in, and also future directions that even this action circle takes. So so it's a new collaboration as well, which is a beautiful thing. So bringing together these people across these disciplines, across these institutions, and across these career stages to make a brand new collaboration. So people are developing their own networks, developing these collaboration skills as well, particularly for the early career people who maybe haven't been involved with something like this before. So that's been a really nice sort of value add for being involved in the action circle. And that might also, like those collaborations might also lead to future work down the track as well. And it has been a great opportunity for people from those various career stages to contribute to something that probably they wouldn't have ever had opportunity to before, because advocacy tends to be something that normally people really only start to engage in towards the end of their career. So it's nice to have this opportunity to be able to sort of come together and have this sort of informal mentoring and this pathway that allows people to have this experience with engaging in advocacy and having a voice and seeing the importance of what we're doing, that it's not just research for research's sake, but it's actually out there, potentially, hopefully, having an impact on the public discourse and on policy, but at least trying to do so, I think, is a really powerful reinforcer for people across all career stages to feel that we're not operating just in a silo or just like in our little office where we're doing our little bit of research and then nobody ever reads it and we never like meet other people and we don't have much of an impact. Instead, it's like opening up, like, well, how does my work like relate to the outside world? How can I have a positive impact? How can I work with other people who have a similar interest, even if they're outside of my discipline? And just having that sort of horizon broadening has been, I think, a really fantastic part of this action circle. And I really do hope that it can increase our capacity for high impact advocacy and research translation. So both in terms of the individuals who are working within this action circle, so like by bringing people together, it increases our capacity and our ability to have this voice. Because we're working together, we've got this collective power, it is helping us to actually potentially make a difference in this space where if you're just one person, it can feel a lot less impactful. And then also, I think, because we are building these networks, we're building these collaborations, we're also building these pathways and pipelines for this kind of work to be happening in PAFRA. I think it's also increasing the capacity of PAFRA going forward to have that impact and to translate the research that we're doing into real world applications. So altogether then, sort of pulling this together, I'd say sort of the key messages and things to sort of come away with from this presentation is that we know that there's research that says that punitive measures don't work and they're counterproductive. They increase reoffending and the frequency and seriousness of crimes. And so it's very important that we continue to advocate for families and parenting and community-based approaches that are evidence-based, that are preventative, and that are trauma-informed. And this is really the way that we need to move forward. And so both in terms of this action circle and potentially future action circles and the research that individuals are doing, this is a very important area. So it's a very positive thing. This action circle has come together to do this work, and there's still more for us to do. So what I'd ask everybody who's interested to do is to really stay engaged in the current affairs so you can sort of keep your finger on the pulse and see what is the discourse going, like what's it doing? What path is it going down? Where are policymakers trying to take us as a nation? And is that somewhere that we want to go? So if not, what can we do about it? And what we think from our expertise and from the research that we've done and the collaboration that we've done through this action circle, we really think that the answer is to support evidence-based youth justice reform and to push for real change through getting involved in campaigns that support early intervention with parenting and family as a focus. So one example is the Change the Age campaign that's happening. So if you're interested in this kind of area, I recommend that you look into that campaign. And also, if you are interested in what we're doing and you'd like to know more, please do check out our website on the PAFRA website. And you're very welcome to get in touch with us as well. Because as I said, the work that we're doing is ongoing. And so if we've got more people who are passionate, who are interested, who have got expertise, who have got knowledge that can help us to sort of be more effective in our advocacy, because we really want to be as effective as possible, please do get in touch because there's so much work to do in this space. And we really do think it's very important, and we've got great potential as a group to make a real difference. So now we'll have a bit of time for questions and discussions. So so thanks very much for your attention today, and it's been great to be able to share with you everything that we've been doing so far. And I look forward to hopefully in the future being able to share with you the sort of the further developments that this action circle and our advocacy has had. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Karis and Sarah. It's such important work, and yeah, that was a great overview. We've got time for some questions or comments. If anyone would like to ask a question, please feel free just to unmute, either pop your hand up in the little symbol or just ask your question, or otherwise feel free to write your question in the chat as well. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I'll jump in if I can. Probably more so a comment than anything. Thanks very much, Sarah and Karis, for your presentation. I'm from 54 Reasons. We're the domestic services arm of Save the Children, and you may have seen our advocacy for raising the age. We released a report last year. I work in the practice team, so sort of a national overview, and I guess this was music to my ears, what this sort of group is trying to form, because I've worked in, we run a number of YJ services. And I guess my frustration comes because whenever we see a tender come out, it's very much individual, just assertive outreach, one-on-one, no mention of the family. And I guess my frustration comes because, the evidence is really clear that that's what we need. So, if there's room for NGOs to be involved, such as us in the Action Circle, very, very keen to be. And I don't know, a question I suppose is how do we sort of strengthen the local data for this as well? Because I think the international literature is quite clear, but is there a way we can strengthen the local data? And, maybe that's just part of the building the message as we go.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And yeah, it's fantastic the work that you and your team and your organization are doing in this space. And definitely if you are interested in being involved, please get in touch because yeah, we could definitely do with more hands on deck, especially such experienced hands as what you and your team would have. Yeah, so and the issue of data, it's such a huge one, isn't it? Because if we're trying to make these evidence-based cases and these arguments to try and sway policy, we really need that data. And if it's just lacking, then yeah, it just shows that there's this big need there. So I know we have got some people in the Action Circle who have been working to collect data in this area, but primarily they tend to be around sort of individual programs, because I suppose that's the thing with most data collection, right? It's like it's around, like, we've got this one intervention, let's collect pre and post data because we can get funding for that, but then without that sort of broader government support for having data about actually what is going on in this space and what is helping and what is cost effective, it's very hard to actually know on that sort of broader level. Yeah, but I think that's a great thing for us to also advocate for, isn't it? To sort of say, like, we need more evidence, we need more interest from government, we need more data. Everything that government does really should be data driven, but that's a work in progress. So
yeah, and how much of your advocacy do you think would potentially involve education? Because I think obviously we see the narrative from various news outlets that these are bad kids, they need to be locked up. And I think for me the huge benefit of involving the family is, because of where the young people are developmentally, in terms of their problem solving and decision making. So, I mean, how much, has there been any discussion around that education piece for the public? Is it hard as it is to come in from that sort of softer approach?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, so in terms of public education, sort of letting people know.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Just in
sort of.
terms of brain development and,
Mm,
adolescence and things like that.
yeah, yeah. I think we do have a small piece in there about public education, but it tends to be sort of around public education for parents around like how to support their children and how to sort of use more effective parenting in order to
Yeah.
support their positive development, rather than public education about like, well, why is it that some young people might be, you know, sort of breaking the law, or like what are, and like also what is the developmentally appropriate expectations that we can have for children in terms
That's
of
right.
their forward thinking, to think through consequences and control their behavior, and what are the things that might be affecting their ability to control their behavior. So I think that would be a really interesting part that we could expand on in our recommendations, particularly in this academic piece that we're putting out, and then the conversation article. Yeah. Yeah, great idea. Thanks, Ollie. So yeah, please do get in touch. It'd be great to have
Yes,
you
will do. Yeah,
involved.
will do.
Yeah.
Any other
And
questions or comments?
if I could ask a question as well. I was wondering if there's any kind of scope to bringing young people kind of into the action circle as well, maybe something more qualitative, they experience what they want in terms of the policy reform, and yeah, maybe young people with lived experience. Is there any scope for this line of work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sylvia. So obviously that sort of stakeholder engagement, like talking to people with lived experience, is so important. And that can be done in a range of ways, right? So it can be done sort of through having, like say, focus groups of young people who are maybe involved in the youth justice system, or who are in danger of being involved in the youth justice system, or just generally young people, and sort of asking them as sort of consumer advisors in a way. There's also potential for doing more in-depth qualitative, sort of more traditional qualitative research. And I think that is sort of a piece that can be overlooked somewhat in the modern discourse around the need for sort of stakeholder engagement. It's like, well, we do also have qualitative research, but I don't think there's been very much done in this particular arena. And then if we're thinking about in Australia in particular, then there's even less out there. So I would love to see some data being collected either through that sort of qualitative sort of analysis methods, or through having some kind of community engagement. But then, as with all these things, funding can be a massive barrier. Yeah. So if we were able to get some funding to help to pay for young people's time to come in and give us some of their input and their thoughts, or to participate in some research, that would be fantastic. And also paying for researchers' time to conduct that research, that would be great. But unfortunately, it's a real barrier to this kind of work. Sarah, did you have something to add to that?
I did. I did want to bring up, I believe Professor Tamara Walsh from University of Queensland is doing some work with interviewing youth involved in the criminal justice system on their experiences. So it is a really interesting and really new pathway that is just being investigated in Queensland, which I think is fantastic, and it's exciting to see where that research goes in the future.
Yeah, I was thinking, it's very time consuming and resource intensive work. But it can really bring in young people's voice. And I also think politicians, they might love stories. Like maybe if we could share stories with them, they are more likely to, make policy reforms and things like that. Yeah, but thank you for the presentation.
Any other questions or comments from anyone? All right. Well, thank you so much again, Karis and Sarah, for your presentation. The recording of the presentation will be up on the PAFRA website in the coming days. So if anyone in the audience knows of anyone that wasn't able to make it, feel free to let them know that it's going to be up. Yeah, otherwise.